Imagine being handed a secret tip that promises to change your life forever, a tip so powerful that it could launch you from a life of constant struggle to unimaginable wealth. But what if that fortune comes with a heavy, hidden price? Stick with me as we dive into the extraordinary tale of Marcus, an everyday airport worker whose one act of kindness sets off a chain of events that will test his very soul. Marcus was an unassuming airline employee, forever toiling away amidst the clamor of suitcases and frazzled travelers. Every day, he clocked in with the weight of financial worries pressing down on him. His worn wallet, containing nothing more than meager bills, was a constant reminder that another month of barely scraping by was just around the corner. Then one seemingly ordinary day at the airport, as he scanned boarding passes, a sudden commotion near the security checkpoint caught his eye. A sharply dressed woman, her designer handbag spilling its luxurious contents onto the polished floor, was in a state of frantic disarray. With trembling fingers, she fumbled to recover her passport from the chaos. Clad in an immaculate tailored suit and adorned with an expensive watch, she was the stark antithesis of Marcus's rumpled uniform. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal, and in that brief moment, Marcus wondered what could possibly link two people from such disparate worlds. Little did he know that this fateful encounter would send both of their lives hurtling into a vortex of wealth, secrecy, and moral turmoil. Vivian's heart pounded as she desperately searched her designer bag. Without her passport, she knew she risked missing not just any flight but the one that represented her only lifeline, a critical connection that would allow her to escape a tangled web of deceit. Marcus, ever observant, noticed the palpable panic etched across her face. Over the years, he had witnessed countless travelers in distress, yet something about this woman's desperation struck him deeply. Perhaps it was the incongruity between her polished exterior and the fear that lurked behind her eyes, or maybe it was the unspoken promise that people in crisis often rewarded sincere help with generous tips. Either way, Marcus felt compelled to act. "Can I help you with anything, ma'am?" he inquired softly, his voice a calm contrast to the chaos surrounding them. Vivian's eyes, momentarily clouded with fear, quickly sharpened with determination. "I can't find my passport," she whispered urgently. "I absolutely cannot miss this connecting flight." Marcus nodded in sympathy. "Let's retrace your steps. When did you last see it?" he asked, already scanning the area for clues. As they worked together through the maze of the airport, Marcus couldn't help but notice that Vivian's composure was strangely unnerving. Unlike the usual impatient or indifferent travelers he was accustomed to, her urgency carried an undercurrent of dread that hinted at far more than just travel anxiety. As they moved through the terminal, Marcus's innate efficiency shone through. He navigated every shortcut and workaround in the labyrinth of airport bureaucracy with an ease that left Vivian both relieved and increasingly conflicted. Each step toward the plane reminded her that her secret, one involving millions in dubious, ill-gotten gains, was unraveling. Behind her carefully maintained facade was a desperate scramble to avoid a cascade of consequences. Yet, in that moment, her anxiety was eclipsed by gratitude. Finally, near the boarding gate, Marcus held up a small, unassuming piece of paper. "Here's your passport," he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. Vivian's relief was palpable, but so was the rush of guilt that washed over her. This kind stranger, this unassuming airport worker, had unwittingly become an accomplice in her plan to escape a mounting crisis. Before she could fully process the gravity of the situation, she reached into her purse, searching for a token of thanks. "Thank you," she breathed, her hands trembling as she produced a slip of paper. "There's one more thing, a piece of advice, as a token of my gratitude." With that, she scribbled a hastily scrawled stock tip on the paper, a tip she swore was worth more than any cash she could have offered, and pressed it into Marcus's hand before melting into the crowd of departing travelers. For a long moment, Marcus stood frozen, the slip of paper clutched tightly in his fist. A part of him wanted to call after her, to demand an explanation for the mysterious tip. Yet another part, the part that had known the relentless grind of living paycheck to paycheck, whispered that this might be his long-awaited chance, a golden opportunity to escape the cycle of poverty that had defined his life. With the note burning a hole in his pocket, he carefully unfolded it. The paper revealed a cryptic series of letters and numbers, an enigmatic stock symbol accompanied by a brief message, "Trust me, it's worth more than any cash." Marcus's heart raced with a blend of excitement and trepidation. Could this obscure code be the key to a fortune? Or was it a trap, designed to snare him in a web of high-stakes crime and moral compromise? As he walked through the bustling airport, his mind churned with possibilities. He recalled the fear in Vivian's eyes, the urgency in her voice, and the subtle hints that she was running from something far more sinister than a missed flight. Every time he reached into his pocket to smooth the edges of the folded note, he was reminded of that fateful encounter, a moment of kindness that had unexpectedly become the catalyst for a life-altering gamble. Later that evening, after his shift had ended, Marcus found a quiet corner in the airport lounge. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and typed the mysterious stock symbol into a search engine. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the search results. The company was real, a clean energy technology firm that, according to the scattered reports, was on the brink of a revolutionary breakthrough. Marcus's pulse quickened. This could be his ticket out of financial despair. Yet, a nagging voice in his mind warned him to proceed with caution. What if it was too good to be true? What if he risked everything he had by trusting a stranger's words? As he weighed the decision, Marcus thought of his tiny apartment, the stack of overdue bills on his kitchen table, and the dreams he had long put on hold because he could never seem to get ahead. The memory of Vivian's desperate eyes haunted him. Was there something more behind that kind gesture? Why would someone in such a precarious situation offer him a tip that promised riches beyond his wildest dreams? Still, the allure of a better future was irresistible. Determined to seize his chance, Marcus decided he would research the stock further, maybe even consult his friend Carlos, who worked at a local bank. Despite the lingering doubts, he pressed on. This was his moment, a leap of faith that could either transform his life or shatter his already fragile existence. The next few days became a blur of anxious anticipation. At work, Marcus found himself constantly checking his phone, his mind swirling with images of soaring stock charts and the prospect of doubling his meager savings. His co-workers began to notice his distracted state, the dark circles beneath his eyes hinting at sleepless nights spent poring over financial websites. When his supervisor, Carlos, pulled him aside, he offered a concerned, "You okay, man?" Marcus could only force a smile and mumble something about not sleeping well. But deep down, Marcus knew that his entire future now hinged on a series of numbers on a screen. On the third day, during a rare moment of calm on his lunch break, he nearly choked on his sandwich as he noticed that the stock had surged, not just a little, but dramatically. His initial investment had doubled, and his heart soared with disbelief. For the first time in his life, he felt the intoxicating rush of hope. This was it, the opportunity he had been waiting for. Yet, even as his net worth grew exponentially, a shadow of doubt crept into his mind. He remembered Vivian's haunted eyes, the unspoken terror beneath her composed exterior. What had she been running from? And by accepting her tip, had he inadvertently tied himself to something far more dangerous than he could comprehend? As the days turned into weeks, Marcus watched the stock ticker relentlessly. With each uptick, his newfound wealth expanded in ways he had never imagined. The numbers danced before his eyes, each spike sending jolts of excitement through his body. It was as if fate itself had finally decided to smile upon him. Yet, amidst the euphoria, a persistent unease nagged at him. He began to wonder if fortune was truly following him, or if he was merely caught in a cycle of luck that could vanish at any moment. The transformation in Marcus's life was swift and breathtaking. With his financial woes suddenly behind him, he paid off his mounting debts and even began to plan for a future he had only ever dreamed of. In a bold move that shocked his co-workers, he marched into Carlos's office during a lunch break and handed in his resignation. "I'm sure," he told Carlos with a newfound confidence, "it's time for me to pursue other opportunities." Carlos's expression was a mix of shock and concern, but Marcus was resolute. Emboldened by his early success, Marcus soon found himself immersed in a lifestyle he had never imagined possible. He moved out of his cramped apartment and into a spacious condo overlooking the city. Gone were the days of worn-out uniforms and budget basics. Now, his wardrobe boasted designer labels, and he even treated himself to a sleek sports car, one he had once only admired from afar in the airport parking lot. With his rising fortune, Marcus wasn't just focused on personal indulgence, he also began to extend a helping hand to his family. When he paid off his parents' mortgage over a lavish dinner, the tears in his mother's eyes made every sacrifice worthwhile. However, the sudden surge in wealth did more than just change his bank balance, it transformed the way people viewed him. Old friends from his airline days began to regard him with a mix of awe and suspicion, while new acquaintances were drawn solely by the allure of his success. Even within his family, opinions were divided. His mother questioned his extravagant spending, and his father wondered if leaving a stable job for the unpredictable world of investments was a wise choice. Despite the external accolades and the luxurious trappings of his new life, Marcus found himself haunted by the memory of Vivian. Her desperate eyes, the secretive way she had pressed that cryptic tip into his hand, all of it gnawed at his conscience. In the midst of all this, Marcus decided to venture into the realm of real estate investment. His research led him to explore properties, attend investment seminars, and network with other investors, all in the hope of solidifying and growing his newfound wealth. One day, during a tour of an opulent beachfront mansion with a charming real estate agent named Jordan, Marcus's mind drifted back to that fateful day at the airport. As Jordan guided him through the sprawling property with promises of luxury rental income and commercial potential, Marcus couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that his life was spiraling into uncharted territory. Outside the mansion, the salty breeze tousled Marcus's designer sunglasses as he took in the panoramic ocean view, a stark reminder of how far he had come from his humble beginnings. Every detail of his new life, from the sleek sports car in the parking lot to the high-rise condo filled with modern artwork and elegant furnishings, was a testament to the extraordinary transformation triggered by a single act of kindness. Yet, even as he celebrated his success, the nagging question remained, what had Vivian been running from? And had accepting her tip doomed him to a future riddled with dangerous secrets? One morning, as Marcus sipped his coffee and scrolled through his phone, a series of news alerts flashed across the screen. His heart skipped a beat when he saw that an investigation into insider trading had been launched, a probe that mentioned a high-profile lawyer named Vivian Donovan. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning, the very woman who had given him that life-changing tip was now implicated in a major financial scandal. The clean energy company he had invested in was under scrutiny for allegations of artificially inflated stock values and fraudulent trading practices. Marcus felt a cold sweat break out across his skin as the weight of his actions crashed down upon him. His fortune, once a beacon of hope, now seemed like a precarious tower built on shifting sand. Desperation set in as Marcus scoured the news for answers. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages from concerned friends and business associates, all eager to know if he had seen the breaking news. With every new headline, the once bright promise of his windfall was tainted by the possibility of impending ruin. In the midst of this turmoil, Marcus found himself at a crossroads. The wealth that had transformed his life now felt like a double-edged sword, offering him everything he had ever wanted, yet threatening to strip away his integrity and peace of mind. One sleepless night, as Marcus sat in his luxurious penthouse with the city lights shimmering in the background, he began to question the true cost of his newfound fortune. The designer clothes, the sleek sports car, and the opulent condo, all these symbols of success suddenly felt hollow in the face of the moral compromises he had made. The memory of Vivian's desperate eyes haunted him, and the question echoed relentlessly in his mind, had he unwittingly become a part of something much larger and far more dangerous than he could ever have imagined? Overwhelmed by guilt and fear, Marcus resolved to seek counsel. He reached out to his longtime friend and former supervisor, Carlos, who had always been a voice of reason in his life. Over a quiet cup of coffee in a modest cafe far removed from the glittering world Marcus now inhabited, he confessed his predicament. "I'm in a complicated situation," Marcus admitted, his voice trembling with a mix of uncertainty and regret. "I came into some money recently, money I didn't exactly earn through hard work, and now I'm not sure if it was obtained the right way." Carlos's eyes widened slightly, and after a long pause, he responded, "Are we talking insider trading here?" Marcus's silence was all the answer Carlos needed. "Look, you didn't ask for that tip, and you never knew where it came from," Carlos advised gravely. "Sometimes the easiest path isn't the right one." His words were simple yet laden with meaning, a stark reminder of the integrity Marcus had once cherished. For weeks thereafter, Marcus's life became a precarious balancing act between enjoying his lavish rewards and grappling with the ever-present threat of legal repercussions. The SEC soon took notice. One day, while he was reviewing his investment records at home, Marcus's phone buzzed with an unexpected message, a reminder of an appointment with an SEC investigator. The anxiety that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted into full-blown terror. He realized that it was only a matter of time before the authorities connected the dots back to Vivian, and possibly to him. That fateful evening, as Marcus sat in his penthouse, the grandeur of his surroundings did little to calm the storm raging within him. The once exhilarating thrill of watching his bank balance soar was now replaced by a suffocating dread. Every designer piece, every accolade on his wall, served as a painful reminder that his success was built on a foundation of secrets and lies. With his heart pounding in his chest, Marcus decided to gather every piece of evidence related to his encounter with Vivian. He spent hours writing down every detail, the frantic search for her passport, the whispered promise on a scrap of paper, every sleepless night spent agonizing over the implications of that mysterious tip. In a moment of painful clarity, Marcus realized that he was at a crossroads. He could either continue to hide behind the facade of his ill-gotten gains or come clean and face the consequences, however dire they might be. His mind churned with the potential outcomes. One path led to an endless cycle of paranoia and fear, a life where every knock on the door, every unexpected phone call, could signal the collapse of everything he had worked so hard to build. The other path, though fraught with the risk of losing his fortune and enduring public disgrace, promised a chance at reclaiming the integrity and peace of mind he had long since sacrificed. As the SEC investigation intensified, Marcus found himself under constant scrutiny. Unusual delays in his emails, suspicious echoes on his phone calls, and the unnerving sensation of being watched turned his every day into a nightmare. Even a routine visit to his bank ended in panic when he noticed a sharply dressed man lurking nearby, his hand resting near an earpiece, a silent, menacing reminder that the authorities were closing in. One particularly harrowing day, while Marcus was leaving the bank, a stranger's voice rang out behind him. "Excuse me, sir," the man called. Marcus froze, his heart pounding in his ears. For a split second, he feared that he had been caught. But as he turned, he saw that it was merely the bank teller, smiling gently as she returned his forgotten card. The brief relief, however, did little to ease the gnawing terror that had now become his constant companion. That night, as Marcus lay awake in his opulent bedroom, his mind raced with the potential repercussions of his choices. The taste of his newfound wealth was bittersweet, overshadowed by the heavy burden of guilt and uncertainty. In the midst of his inner turmoil, a sudden knock at the door shattered the silence. Two stern-faced agents, clad in crisp uniforms and bearing badges that glinted ominously in the dim light, stood on his threshold. "Good evening," said Agent Reed in a clipped, professional tone. "We're with the SEC. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your recent investments." Marcus's throat tightened as he led them into his living room, the plush leather chairs and elegant decor now seeming incongruous with the gravity of the moment. As the agent settled in, their eyes never leaving his face, Marcus tried to muster a semblance of calm. But with every passing second, he felt his carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. The questioning was relentless. Agent Lawson leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Your investment patterns are highly unusual, Marcus. Large sums were funneled into a particular clean energy company just before major announcements. Can you explain where you got this information?" Her tone was both inquisitive and skeptical. Marcus's mind raced. He recalled the memory of Vivian, the frantic urgency in her eyes, the trembling certainty with which she had pressed that cryptic tip into his hand. His voice wavered as he stammered, I got lucky, I suppose. I heard some buzz in financial circles, and I took a chance." Agent Lawson's eyes narrowed. "We've heard that before, Marcus. Luck does not usually follow such a consistent pattern." She paused, allowing the silence to thicken the tension. "We'll need to see all your financial records and any communications related to these investments." Marcus's pulse pounded in his ears. Every word he uttered felt like a potential betrayal of the secret he had harbored. With a shaky breath, he agreed, promising to provide everything they required. But as soon as the agents left, the oppressive weight of his actions threatened to crush him entirely. His lavish penthouse, once a symbol of his triumph over adversity, now loomed like a gilded cage imprisoning a man drowning in regret. In the days that followed, Marcus found no respite. His every interaction, whether a casual greeting from a neighbor or a hurried conversation with a business associate, left him feeling exposed and vulnerable. The once thrilling prospect of further investments became a source of mounting anxiety. Each tick of the clock, each notification on his phone, served as a stark reminder that the consequences of his choices were closing in. Desperate for a solution, Marcus began to contemplate the possibility of coming clean. He envisioned the alternative, a life stripped of all his hard-won luxuries but unburdened by the constant fear of impending collapse. But then, the seductive allure of his newfound wealth and status beckoned him to maintain his silence. After all, he had worked so hard to claw his way out of poverty, even if that ascent had been marred by one fateful, questionable decision. As the investigation dragged on, Marcus's inner conflict reached a fever pitch. Nights were spent pacing his penthouse, wrestling with the duality of his existence, the man who had once prided himself on honest work versus the man who now lived amid opulence and deceit. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, a stranger adorned in designer suits with worry etched into every line, haunted him with the stark realization that he had lost himself. Unable to bear the isolation any longer, Marcus reached out to his lawyer, Mr. Parker, whose calm, methodical advice had guided him through many of life's crises. With trembling hands and a heavy heart, he recounted every detail of his encounter with Vivian, the frantic search for her passport, the slip of paper containing that enigmatic stock tip, every moment of doubt and fear that had followed. Mr. Parker listened intently, his voice measured and reassuring even as he explained the potential legal consequences of insider trading, hefty fines, possible prison sentences, and the irreversible tarnishing of one's reputation. Yet, as Marcus listened, a part of him clung to the hope that he could somehow extricate himself from the looming disaster without forfeiting everything he had achieved. He resolved to fight the charges, to maintain his hard-earned wealth and status, no matter the personal cost. With Mr. Parker's guidance, he began to orchestrate a legal strategy, a delicate balancing act between cooperation and silence, between admitting guilt and preserving his fortune. The ensuing weeks were a blur of legal meetings, tense strategy sessions, and a constant undercurrent of dread. Marcus's personal life, once filled with the simple joys of friendship and familial love, now revolved around board meetings and clandestine consultations with his lawyers. His parents, initially overjoyed by his sudden success, grew increasingly distant, their pride marred by worry and unspoken disappointment. Friends, too, began to drift away, unable or unwilling to reconcile the man they once knew with the high-stakes gambler he had become. One evening, as Marcus sat alone in his luxurious living room nursing a glass of expensive whiskey, the enormity of his predicament finally struck him. The penthouse, once a dream come true, now felt cavernous and cold. Every designer artifact, every prestigious award displayed on the wall, was a bitter reminder of a life built on secrets. His mind wandered to the memory of Vivian, the mysterious woman whose desperate act had set all of this in motion. Had she managed to escape the consequences of her actions? Or was she, like him, doomed to be consumed by the very secret that had once promised so much? The weight of his choices became unbearable. Marcus began to record every detail of his experiences, painstakingly documenting the chain of events that had led him to this moment. Page after page of handwritten notes, filled with the raw emotions of guilt, fear, and uncertainty, accumulated on his desk. In those quiet, solitary hours, he saw his life laid bare, a stark narrative of a man caught between two worlds, neither of which offered solace. At long last, as dawn broke on another tumultuous day, Marcus reached a decision. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, he picked up his phone and dialed Mr. Parker's number. This call, he knew, could irrevocably change the course of his life. In that moment, suspended between terror and relief, Marcus resolved to take the plunge, whether it meant sacrificing his fortune, enduring public shame, or even facing prison. He could no longer live a lie. But even as he prepared to confess, doubt gnawed at him. What if coming clean would destroy everything he had fought so hard to build? What if he lost not only his wealth, but the respect of his family and friends? With these questions swirling in his mind, Marcus's resolve wavered. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the polished floor, and for a moment, time itself seemed to stand still. In the ensuing chaos of conflicting emotions, Marcus's determination hardened. He would not allow anyone, least of all himself, to strip away the fruits of his labor. With every ounce of his being, he vowed to fight back, to safeguard the empire he had built with such painstaking effort. Over the next few weeks, he embarked on a relentless campaign of legal maneuvering and strategic planning. His decision to maintain silence sent shock waves through every corner of his personal and professional life. Friends who had once celebrated his success now whispered in hushed tones, and even his parents, torn between pride and concern, began to question the path he had chosen. As Marcus continued to navigate this treacherous landscape, the tension within him grew almost unbearable. Each day was a delicate balancing act, a constant struggle to keep his secrets buried while outwardly exuding the confidence of a self-made millionaire. His once simple life, marked by the honest labor of an airline worker, now revolved around high-stakes investments, luxurious indulgences, and the ever-looming specter of legal retribution. Late one night, as he gazed out over the glittering cityscape from his penthouse window, Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of introspection. The dazzling lights below, which had once symbolized his escape from poverty, now appeared as a gilded prison, each shimmering building a reminder of the cost of his choices. In that moment, he wondered if he had truly achieved success, or if he had merely exchanged one set of chains for another. The final twist in this harrowing tale came on a seemingly ordinary day when Marcus, deep in thought over his latest investment records, was abruptly interrupted by a knock at his door. Standing on the threshold were two stern-faced agents, Agent Reed and Agent Lawson, whose presence confirmed his worst fears. With measured steps, they entered his living room, their badges catching the light ominously. The conversation that followed was a blur of pointed questions and measured responses, each inquiry chipping away at the carefully constructed veneer of Marcus's success. Agent Reed's voice was unyielding as he demanded, "Explain your significant investments in green tech innovations, especially given their surge just before major announcements." Marcus's heart pounded as he struggled to form a coherent reply. I got lucky," he stammered, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. The agents exchanged skeptical glances, and Agent Lawson's eyes bore into him. Luck doesn't follow such a consistent pattern, Marcus. We need every piece of your financial history and communications related to these trades. Marcus complied, his voice barely above a whisper as he promised to gather all the records. Once they left, the silence that followed was deafening. The reality of his situation settled over him like a suffocating shroud. His lavish lifestyle, once a beacon of hope and achievement, now seemed irreparably tarnished by the secrets he had harbored. In the days after the SEC visit, Marcus's internal battle raged on. He was caught between the seductive comfort of wealth and the piercing clarity of moral integrity. Late at night, while sitting alone in his opulent study surrounded by stacks of financial papers and accolades, he pondered the true value of his success. Was it worth the ceaseless anxiety, the sleepless nights, and the relentless fear of exposure? Could he continue living a life where every moment was overshadowed by the haunting memory of that one fateful encounter with Vivian? The culmination of these reflections eventually led Marcus to a crossroads. He knew that his carefully maintained facade could not last forever, that eventually, the truth would catch up with him. Yet the thought of relinquishing everything he had fought so hard for filled him with dread. The stakes were astronomical, his reputation, his wealth, and ultimately, his very freedom were all on the line. In a final act of defiance, Marcus resolved to stand his ground. He decided to fight the charges, to engage in a relentless legal battle to protect his empire, even if it meant sacrificing his peace of mind. With his lawyer, Mr. Parker, by his side, he plunged into a whirlwind of court hearings, strategy sessions, and media scrutiny. Every step of the way, he clung to the belief that he was, at heart, an honest man who had simply been dealt an extraordinary hand, one that, despite its origins in a desperate moment, had opened the door to a future he had long dreamed of. As the investigation continued and the pressure mounted, Marcus's inner turmoil became nearly palpable. His once bright dreams of financial freedom were now clouded by the specter of potential ruin, and every interaction, every glance from a stranger on the street, felt laden with suspicion. The man who had once found solace in the simplicity of his former life now faced a perilous future where every decision could be his last. In the final moments of this turbulent chapter, Marcus sat at his grand desk, the weight of his choices bearing down on him like an unbearable burden. With a deep, shuddering breath, he reflected on the journey that had brought him from a humble airport worker to a man ensnared in a web of high-stakes investments and moral compromise. He knew that the coming days would be critical, that his next steps would determine whether he would emerge as a redeemed individual or be forever consumed by the consequences of his actions. And so, as Marcus's fate hangs in the balance between fortune and downfall, I ask you, what would you do if a single act of kindness could unlock a treasure trove of opportunities, but at a price that could cost you everything? Drop your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge what you think you know about luck, morality, and the true cost of success. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes, the line between a dream come true and a nightmare is as thin as a single piece of paper. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit the like button and share your take on Marcus's journey in the comments. Stay tuned for more compelling tales that inspire, inform, and make you question the world around you.